were the originals wasted in the Vampire Diaries TV show? And I ask this because of what the originals are and what the show The Vampire Diaries is about. Now, the show Vampire Diaries revolves around mainly three characters: Elena, a human girl, and Stefan and Damon, two vampire brothers. Now, this basically revolves around three of them, and it's basically a show about vampires. And what the originals are, they are the first vampires, the first and the oldest and the most powerful. And unlike normal vampires, they can be killed very easily. I mean, they're super strong. No normal vampire can fight them. Even regular vampires that are the oldest to them can fight them. And I say this because the older vampires are more stronger than the younger vampires just because of pure age. But it doesn't matter. The other regular vampires, 1,000 years old, fight the originals. They can't beat them. That's how powerful they are. They create, and these vampires are the ones who created the entire vampire line. I mean, each vampire comes from a bloodline of this family of vampires. And when you look at all that information, the originals seem like the final level characters or villains that the main cast of the Vampire Diaries are supposed to face because of what they are. But in the show, we see them in season 2. Now, that seemed way too early for them to come in. I mean, in season 1, we were just learning about vampires. We learned about a bunch of vampires that were locked in a cave earlier and them escaping. That was interesting enough. But in season 2, we immediately go into the originals, and that seemed like a big mistake to me. And that's honestly why I think towards the end of the show got a little too boring, because the stakes just weren't high enough, in my opinion. And yes, after the originals came, there were a few good moments. I mean, we saw the heretics, those were hybrid vampire and witches, and we saw the hybrid vampire and werewolves, although that's kind of connected to the Klaus, who's an original. But those two don't match up to the originals. They just don't. Unless there was some super ancient werewolves in the show, or super ancient group of witches. This doesn't stack up. Nothing stacks up to the originals. And they should all honestly done the other storylines earlier. The heretic storyline could have been done in season 3 or 4. The werewolves storyline could have been the focus of season 2. The hybrids could have been closer to the end, without revealing who created them. And that would have been a big build up to the originals. And I say that for another reason, because in the story The Vampire Diaries, the originals created all the vampires. So if one of the originals died, every vampire that came from his sire line, or the line that came from him turning that vampire turning one person into a vampire, and that vampire turning one person into a vampire. So basically, a huge chunk of vampires would die, and that's a big issue because both Stefan and Damon, the main characters, they're vampires. And so the only way to kill the originals would be to kill themselves as well, which is a huge problem. And we could see how they try to work their way around it. Maybe we see some way of turning Stefan and Damon into humans in order to stop the original, in order to make sure that they don't die when the originals get killed. And we could focus on finding a way to kill the originals. I mean, because they had a lot of potential and it would have been awesome to see. And yes, in the Vampire Diaries, Elena disappeared after a few seasons because of other reasons. But that wouldn't matter that much, because this could have been an awesome story point. And it would have filled that huge hole easily because the story was so great. and we could have brought in more interesting characters. But yeah, it was a golden opportunity that was missed. The originals, Elijah, Klaus, Rebecca, and we could see the vampires that they created show up somewhere along the line. And maybe even in the end, we could see that the originals not dying, and then they move on to the originals TV show that they're in, instead of them just disappearing in the middle of the Vampire Diaries and going off to do their own show. I mean, come on. Yes, obviously their show was great, but when you connect it with the Vampire Diaries, the timing isn't right. They needed a more fulfilling arc of the Vampire Diaries, and then maybe create an original show. They could have done that; it would have been awesome, but that didn't happen. And for me, that feels like a huge missed opportunity to make such great characters and great villains, not the main antagonists of this entire series. And these characters all have a lot of depth. We could show them earlier we could show them a season before, give them 2 seasons, show their side of things and what they're like, and that would be more compelling to watch in the end. I mean, obviously Rebecca, Klaus, and Elijah all have great storylines, and we could have shown that in the series. So yeah, that's why I think they really missed an opportunity here.